His guidance, we wouldn't be here no way, no how. I can promise you that. You can be seated. We have a Steve. Did you get that cord out of the other way too? Yeah. We have a special guest today. We went out to eat last night and caught up and had a wonderful time. And Dr. Rob and Ginger Carman they hold a very special place in Ginger and our hearts. Quick story about the Ginger thing. And I'm going to be nice because Ginger Carman she's the only woman that can beat me and I can get away with it. Okay? If she needs to, she can. She's more than welcome to. But anyway, I had when he and I met, found out that our wives' names were Ginger, and that was cool. And then, do y'all remember Jack Daniels, the evangelist? Guy that led me to the Lord? Well, he had a dog named Ginger. And so he calls me up one day. He said, I need you to come by the house. And I said, what's going on? He said, it's important. You need to come. And get to his house, and he said, come on, let's walk out to the pasture. We walk out to the pasture. He said, you see that donkey out there? I said, yeah. He said, I just bought that. He said, that is a certified jackass, and his name was Paul Gray. He said, I felt bad for Ginger, so I wanted to make her feel better. But anyway, they've been our mentors, our friends for a long, long time. And like I've said before, you wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for this couple. They're amazing. And, all of the core belief system, creating a culture, all came from them. Serving the community, serving each other, reaching the world. I mean, all of this came from this couple. And so let's all stand real quick. Dr. Rob, you're up.
Thanks all. Hey, you can be seated. You can be seated. It's always fantastic to be Christian church at Minden. But let me just say, this is one of the strongest podiums I've ever seen. The thing's magnetized, I think. But I've often thought to myself, just hanging out with Pastor Paul and Ginger and being around them for all these years now, if I was in a dilemma anywhere in the world, I'd tell my wife, this is the man I want you to call. This guy would go to hell and back and fight. And it's the only church that I know during this entire mess that never closed. You might have met in a parking lot, but you didn't close and tell people to stay home. Now that's a powerful thought, because I'm on Zoom calls, I'm on Instagram stuff in different parts of the world, and I've heard all the rhetoric, I've heard all the spin, and I get it up to here with all the little spin going on right now. We've got more likes than we've ever had before. We've got more of this than we've ever had before. We've got more of this. And I told one guy, I said, then sell your doggone building if you really believe it, because you don't believe it to begin with. That's nothing but spin. The church has to stay open. Pulpits have to be full. Corporate worship has to continue. And if you think that all of this is just a concoction for you to stay safe, you've been listening to the wrong voices. You institute the word safe in the Bible, and you won't have a Bible left. Because there's nothing safe about serving God. There's nothing safe about reaching people. There's nothing safe about going to the world. Paul was never tried to get safe. He was obedient to the heavenly call. He went where nobody went. Even when a prophet of God bound himself and told him not to go, he said, I'm going anyhow. He never went where it was safe. When that gospel hit the city of Kavala in Greece, the first time it hit European soil, he ended up in a prison cell in Philippi. I drove to that prison cell one time. Nothing was safe. And they were worshiping God corporately. Somebody wrote some stupid thing on Facebook. I couldn't help but answer them. About, we can't have corporate worship, nothing in the Bible about that. And I said, I have been in 70 countries. I have been in Vietnam. I've been in Pakistan. I've been in nations where the gospel is forbidden to preach, and they will find a way to gather and worship God. I was in the Vietnam Cambodia border on the back of a 50cc motorcycle. If you've ever seen a 50cc motorcycle, it's one step above a moped. And I was on the back of that thing because I had no idea where we were going. In pouring down rain, we crashed consistently in the mud, and we got to a little tiny village because they wanted to show me the underground church. And I said, when are they coming? They said, they'll come. It was monsoon. Rain was coming down. And they said, just wait, they'll come. They gave me some piece of chicken with peanuts smashed on the inside of it. I sat out there and ate that. And pretty soon I looked up on those trails and I saw Vietnamese people coming from everywhere, huddled in a little tiny building, sitting on the floor just to hear somebody preach the gospel. They will risk their life. They will risk imprisonment. And what do we got to risk? Some little bug floating around? Give me a break. That's why I thank God for a husband and wife team that went against the grain, went against common cultural norms, went against the media, and said, shove it. We're opening up. We're staying full blown. We don't care what anybody says. If 10% of the churches in America would do that, nothing could stop them tomorrow. There's 400,000 Christian churches. Just 10% is 40,000. And if we had that thing, there's no jails big enough. There's no media big enough. There's no political party big enough to stop it. So I take my hat off to the Christian church at Minden, Paul and Ginger Gray, for going against the tide and saying we're opening up, we're going full-blown, full blast, regardless of what anybody says. That's the backbone the church needs. We don't need to hide. We don't need to use the word safe. I am tired of saying safe. I'm tired of the word. I'm tired of the advertisements. I'm tired of the masks. I don't believe in them. They're a bunch. If you want to believe in them, that's fine. But I don't believe in them because that little thing like that can't stop anything to begin with anyhow. And besides that, how come I can walk on the jet bridge of an airplane with stickers telling me to be 6 feet apart, get on the airplane when I'm 1 inch away from everybody, and that's all of a sudden fine? None of this makes logic to the common individual with half a brain. Anyhow, just thought I'd get that out right up front. You got to vent. And this is one of the only churches I could do it in without being carried off the platform. I want to read. I want to share. If I put a title on this thing. In fact, if you ever want to, I write on YouVersion Bible app, and I'm going on my fifth devotion on YouVersion. And the new one, it's not out yet, but the new one's called Stop Dying and Start Living. And that just title grabbed me. And so I titled this message, Stop Dying. We got too many people dying. They've never learned how to live. Living, life, is the centerpiece of the Bible. It's the heart of the Bible. God breathed into Adam the breath of life. He became a living soul. Jesus came that you might have life. The Bible says, walk in newness of life. There was a tree of life. In the book of Genesis, there's another tree of life in the book of Revelation. Everything in the Bible is about life. I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Life is energy. Life is vitality. Life is strength. Life is it's more than just breathing and existing and waking up to another Groundhog Day. Life is experiencing everything God gave you in full measure embracing it with everything you've got, like every single day is the last day that you'll ever live. That's life. And we got a lot of people aren't living. They don't know what life is. They're existing. They just simply go from one day to the next, and every day almost looks the same. There's no embracing of the moment. There's no life within them. There's a story that I want to relate to, one of the great stories in the Old Testament. If you're following along, it's over in 2 Kings chapter 7. I'll give you a background, then we'll look at parts of it. The background is this. In 2 Kings chapter 7, you have this unusual story that Syria had besieged Samaria. They surrounded it. They besieged it. Now, back then, you only have to go back 1,000 years historically to discover that all cities were gated, walled cities with gates on them. Now, once you move up historically forward, the walls, you no longer see cities with walls. The reason for that is they usually would build a city on a high plateau. They would build a wall around it with big gates so they can see the onslaught of the enemy approaching, and would give them a unique advantage. They did a study one time, a whole documentary on, it was called Bible Battles, and they found out the strategy that God gave all through the Old Testament how to fight an enemy. And in our major wars, we have actually had generals that have researched the Bible to find strategies that will bring victory in fighting wars that we still use today. And one of them is you always attack in the morning, and from a westerly standpoint, because the sun coming up on the east is going to blind your intruder, and then you come at them, they can't see you. All of those strategies came from God. But all these cities were built up. They were walled cities. They still, you can go to Italy today, all through Europe, and find walled cities. And they always date back at least 1,000 years. Rome was walled at one time, and so on. So what you have here is Samaria, and it's surrounded. It's a walled city with big gates, and Syria, their enemy, had besieged them. In other words, they locked them up. And they had done it to a point where they cut off their food supply. And it was cut off over such a long period of time that the people inside were dying. And when people start dying, they get very, very desperate. And they were getting to the point they were eating donkey heads. They were taking the dung from doves and selling it. In fact, donkey heads were going for a premium at that time. I've eaten the cheek of a cow, but never a donkey head. And they were taking the dung, the waste of doves, and selling that for a premium and eating it. And then, to make matters worse, 2 women decided to boil their babies. And one woman boiled hers one day, and then they ate it. And the next day was time for the other woman to take her baby, boil it, and eat it, and she took her baby and left, and so on. And that created an uproar. So all this is going on. When Elijah, the prophet, they want to take his head off. The king over here of Samaria wants to take his head off, but he stands up in the midst of it and he makes a statement. Now things couldn't get any worse. But in the midst of all this, Elijah stands up. It's found in verse 1. Then Elijah said, "About this time tomorrow, fine flour will be sold for a shekel." That's just that means 1 piece of silver, and 2 sheaves of barley for a shekel. In other words, everything in 24 hours, everything is about to change. Everything's about to shift. Now, the guy that went to Elijah to deliver a message to him, he didn't believe it. He said, he said, "How can that happen?" He said, "Well, it's going to happen." He said, "You're going to see it, but you'll never partake of any of it." He was killed. Now, there's principles in here for life that I want you to grab hold of. I want you to listen from this point on. Because the thoughts being portrayed at this moment can save you in times of difficulty, can save you in times of whatever the situation might be. If you'll apply the biblical principles to life, It's amazing what will happen. The first one is this. I painted a picture of the background. There's a horrible condition. And Elijah says, it's all going to end. Whole thing's going to end. Never make major decisions in times of fear, worry, anxiety. Never make them. Most people will make a major shift and a major decision at the worst time of their life. A lot of marriages would have been spared if they'd have followed the principle I'm reading right now. A lot of relationships would still be together, but in the heat of an argument, in the heat of anger, a decision was made. Words were spoken that broke two people apart that were never able to find reconciliation. Nations have left other nations because they never followed this biblical principles. Wars have been created because they never followed this simple biblical principle, and that is never make a major decision under pressure. Number one, you don't think right. You're thinking hot. You're thinking out of your emotions. You're not thinking out of logic. You're not thinking with your head. There's murders that happen. We call them hot-blooded murders. An anger erupts. Somebody pulls out a gun. They're not thinking. They shoot somebody. Somebody dies. Somebody goes to prison the rest of their life. Why? Because they made a decision under pressure. And they never recognized what until it was over with. Never do it. If you think of life, you'll think that every person's life has low points and high points. And if you were to take a pen or a pencil, it would look like this. It would look low, high, low, high, low, high. If you make a decision on a low point, you'll go from low point to low point. Your life will follow a trend. You make a decision when you're down, depressed, fearful, anxious, under pressure. That decision will take you to another low point. And your life will go from a low point to a low point to a low point. You always wait till you're on a peak. You always wait till you're on an upstretch. Ed Cole, the late Dr. Ed Cole used to tell us, if you're discouraged, never read the book of Lamentations. He said, read Proverbs, read Psalms. You always want to play into and allow the emotion to come back up. It'll always come back up. And that's what Elijah's saying. It's going to change. Don't do something stupid now. This thing's going to shift. It's going to change. And when you learn to make a decision when you're up, when your emotions are strong and your head is clear and your heart is strong, you'll live what they call peak to peak. Peak to peak. Peak to peak, because right decisions lead to right living that lead to right decisions that lead to right living. You watch people that will say, and I've talked to people, you've met people, maybe you're one of them, that just seem like they have a string of bad things happen. They go from one tragedy to the next tragedy. They're making decisions at a low point in their life. Wait till everything's up. Your head's clear. Because pressure always magnifies. It's the beginning of the baseball season, fictitiously speaking. It's the first game, second inning, bottom of the first. You really don't care who's up to bat. We got a lot of games left. If we lose one, we got a lot to make up for. No pressure. But now it's the World Series. The bottom of the ninth. The final game of the World Series. Bottom of the ninth. Your team is 2 runs behind. You got 2 strikes, 2 outs, 2 strikes, 3 balls. You're up to bat. Bases are loaded. Pressure always magnifies. You swing wrong, the thing's over. You just lost the World Series. You hit that thing out of the ballpark, everything's about to change. Pressure always magnifies it. Listen to me. Then another thought right here. I got a lot of thoughts. This is just all under one thought. But I got a lot of thoughts. Oh! Elijah said, this time tomorrow, it's all going to change. I made mention of that. One day can change everything. I can remember Ginger and I were on a little vacation. We're down in Cabo San Lucas years ago. It was 2008. If you remember anything about that, that's when the market tanked. And I'm over there. They had a gym in this resort. So I was going over there and I was watching the news. I shouldn't have been doing it. And I was watching the stock market just dive. I mean, it dove 900 points. And in 2008, 900 points is a lot of points. Let me tell you, there's a lot of points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And that thing was just diving and diving. And I was getting almost sick to my stomach. I made a phone call back to the States, a financial guy that I was working with. I said, what do I do? He said, just hang on. Just hang on. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. And 24 hours later, it went up 900 points. Evened itself out. Now, what if I'd have sold? What if I'd have made a decision? One day can change everything. It can shift everything. Another point that I love here. Listen to this. This is a bad situation. People face bad situations. The Bible is filled with history and events and people that went through really difficult times. And inevitably, all the years I've been a Christian, I've heard, if God is a God of love, then why didn't he prevent? You ever heard that one? Why didn't he prevent this from happening? God is a God of mercy. Why didn't God prevent this situation or that situation or COVID-19? Why didn't God prevent it? Well, let me take you in your mind to a story that you might be familiar with. You remember when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead? And he found out initially that Lazarus was dead. And he finally has to tell his disciples what's going on because they're clueless. And he finally is blunt and he said, our friend Lazarus is dead. And then he waits. And then when he finally arrives, Lazarus got two sisters, Mary and Martha. And they were very close-knit family and very close to Jesus. They were real personal friends to him. And when he gets there, Martha runs up to him, said, Lord, watch this. She said, if you'd only been here 3 days ago, 4 days, this would never have happened. Remember that one? If. What was she saying? You could have prevented it. You could have prevented all this. If you'd just show, you could have prevented it. And then a few verses later, her sister Mary comes up, says the same thing. Lord, if you'd only been here, this wouldn't have happened. She echoes word for word what her sister said. You could have prevented this. And then you drop down. And there's a crowd of, kind of a funeral crowd. And this bunch of people, they say the same thing. If he would have only been here, he could have 3 times. Prevention, prevention, prevention. Are you with me? Are you with me? Are you with me? It's what we have heard, and sometimes we have even said ourselves, or we have heard, if God's a God of love, if God's a God of mercy, if God's so good, how come he doesn't prevent? Let me tell you something. Jesus cleared the whole issue up right there in that story. God is not a preventionist. Family, we live in a fallen world. We live in a fallen world. God is not a preventionist. You know what he is? Jesus said it right in that verse. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. He's not a preventionist. He's a resurrectionist. And when we understand that, there's going to be dilemma. There's going to be decay. There's going to be things. When he shows up, he says, I'm not a preventionist. I'm not here to coddle your life. I'm not here to make everything safe for you. I'm not here to hide you in a little cave and hide you at home until everything passes away. I am not a safe preventionist. God, a preventionist. You watch parents that have become a preventionist over their children. Their children always grow up weak because they coddle them, they hover over them, they call them helicopter parents. They want to, we wouldn't want them to, don't climb the tree, you might fall. Climb it as high as you want. Don't do this because this might happen. Don't eat that, this might happen. Don't do this. They're preventionist parents. And the more you and I are preventionists, the weaker we become and the weaker our offspring become. God is not a preventionist. We live in a world of danger. We live in a world of havoc. We live in a world of sickness. We live in a world of death. So Jesus shows up. I'm not a preventionist. I am a resurrectionist. I'll resurrect dead things. I bring dead things back to life. I take weak things and make them strong. But he's not going to coddle our life. He's not going to hide our life. He's not going to shelter our life. He's going to put us right in the middle of it and whisper in our ear, I'm the resurrection and the life. Get out there. Get the job done. Are you with me? Another thought. Since I'm getting so much good response on these, I'm going to give you another one. Look at verse 3 and 4 in that same story. 7th chapter. Verse 3 and 4 says, now, oh, I love this. I preached on these guys so much. I get to heaven, I want to meet them. Now there were 4 lepers. Let's listen to this. I was in Miami one time, and a guy named Rudy Gracia had me preach on a Wednesday. Had a little cheap wooden podium. I slammed it in the middle of the message, shattered the whole thing. I came back about a year later, and he had this great big one made out of 6x6s. He said, try to break that one. This one's the strongest one I've ever seen. Now listen. I like these guys. These guys got more courage. Now there were 4 lepers. You ever seen leprosy? Horrible. Your nose falls off, your fingers fall off, your toes fall off. You go blind eventually. It takes lepers, advanced leprosy, they can't walk. You can't walk. It's hard to walk without toes. Toes are what create balance for your life. For these guys to even get up is a struggle. Now watch what they do. Now there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate, and they said one to another, Why are we sitting here until we die? If we say we'll enter the city, the famine is in the city. We'll die there. If we sit here, we'll die also. Now, therefore, come, let us surrender to the army of the Syrians. They'll keep us alive. We shall live. And if not, they're going to kill us, and we're going to die. Did you notice how many times the word die is in there? I like these guys. They came to a logical conclusion. If we sit here, we die. If we go in that, and if we go in Samaria, we die. If we get up and go towards the enemy, we die. Any way you look at it, we die. We die. Now watch this. This is genius. Any way you look at it, we're going to die. We die. We die. We die. Are you with me so far? You got to grab this truth. It's so powerful. If we sit here, we die. We go in there, we die. We go out that way towards the enemy, we die. We die. We die. We die. I'm telling you, it's a powerful truth. You got to get this thing. I'm going to say it again. Say it several times, because if I say it too fast, you're not going to remember anything I say. You're going to walk out there using the word die for the next week. We die, we die, we die. You with me so far? You say, how come that's strong? It's strong. Let me tell you, it's strong. We die. We sit here, we die. We go in there, we die. These guys are geniuses, I'm telling you. We go where we die. You say, that's a powerful truth? I'm telling you, it's one of the most powerful truths in the Bible. Because you'll find out that when you come to this truth, it'll lead to the greatest breakthroughs you've ever had. We die, we die, we die. We die. We die. Are you with me? You're saying you're sure taking a long time. I always take a long time. We die. Any way you look at it, we're going to die. So what are we going to do? We're going to get up. Now, why is this powerful? Why is it powerful? Listen, are you with me so far? Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? I said, are you ready for this? If we sit here, we die. If we go in there, if we go that way, any way you look at it, we're going to die. We die, we die, we die. These are lepers. Evidently, they were educated in the school of logic at one time in their life because they're smarter than everybody in that city. The only one smarter than them is Elijah, the only one. Everybody else, including the king, are dumb. These guys have a brain because the greatest businesses have been built on this principle. The greatest breakthroughs have been built on this principle. The greatest companies were built on this principle. I'm going to come back next week and I'm going to tell you what the principle is. You think I never saw anything in there? I mean, what's good about dying 3 times? Are you with me? Are you ready? I said, are you ready? I'm going to make sure you're ready. I'm not going to give it to you unless you're ready. I'll just refuse to do it. If we sit here, if we go in there, if we go that way, any way you look at it, we die. So what are we going to do? We're going to get up. Why is it powerful? Greatest companies, greatest corporate. I'm telling you, it's truth. The greatest corporations in the history of the world were built on this principle. The greatest churches have been built, and missionaries were built on this principle. The greatest leaders that have led armies into battle, the greatest soldiers that ever fought in wars did it on this, whether they knew it or not, they did it on this principle. When you come to the place in your life, here it is, I'm going to give it to you. When your conclusion is, I've got nothing to lose. This is why I love Paul. I know I never hit a senior leader, but I'll grab hold of you. See, when a person comes to a conclusion, no matter what that is, see, death, once I accept it, I got nothing to lose. As long as I've got something to lose, fear can control my life. As long as I've got something to lose, worry, you got nothing else to lose. And a man or a woman that has nothing to lose has everything to gain at that moment, and by God, they are dangerous. Show me a military army that got nothing to lose and they're going to push to victory. Show me a company that goes bankrupt, that lost it all already, and they come to the conclusion, we already lost it all. We die, we got nothing else to lose. We're going for broke. We're going to make this thing happen because there's no fear anymore. There's no worry anymore. When a man or woman comes to that conclusion, at that moment, they've got everything to gain. I read a story about a guy years ago in the 1920s named Earl P. Haney. Haney. Fascinated me. Earl P. Haney in the 1920s lost his entire fortune. Lost it all. He was hospitalized. He had a bleeding ulcer. He went from 175 pounds down to 90. bleeding ulcer in his stomach, worried, full of fear. Listen to this story. He lost it all. He said, I was so worried that ulcers began eating the lining of my stomach. One night I had a terrible hemorrhage. I was rushed to the hospital. My weight went from 175 pounds to 90. I was worn not even to lift my hand. 3 doctors, including an ulcer specialist, said my case was incurable. Earl lived on alkaline powders and a tablespoon of half milk, half cream every hour, and had to have his stomach pumped twice a day. Ain't nobody in here living like that. He's dying. They're pumping his stomach twice a day. He's skin and bones, half milk, half cream, alkaline powders, spoon-fed 3 times a day. When all of a sudden, Earl had an epiphany, just like those lepers did. He said, Earl, you're dying. You got nothing to lose, buddy. So what is it, Earl? What is it, Earl? Talking to himself. They say people that talk to themselves are more intelligent than the average person. I also found out that when people talk to themselves and answer themselves back, they're highly intelligent because we like listening to intelligent conversation. So Earl talked to himself, said, Earl, what do you got to lose? What is it you always wanted to do? And he thought, I've always wanted, 1920s, I always wanted to take a steamship and travel the entire world. It takes 1 year. So he boarded the SS Adams with instructions to the captain, put his coffin in the ship, and wrote instructions out that if I die, put me in the deep freeze. And when we arrived back in America, he wrote all these instructions. I want to be buried on the family plot in Nebraska. His doctor said, you're crazy. Earl got on that steamship. Now, this is Earl's story, not mine. This is Earl's story. Here's what happened to him. He got on the SS Adams. Within a few days after traveling, he began to feel better. He started smoking long black cigars, drinking highballs. This is his story, not mine. He began to live. He began to live. He began to, what was he doing? He was dying. He began to live. His weight came back. By the time he saw India and China, he thought, Earl, you don't have it that bad. Why did all this happen? Because Earl accepted the worst. And when he accepted the worst for the first time, the fear left him. The worry left him. And God had the opportunity to heal him. When you rid your life of fear, worry, and anxiety, your immune system starts coming back, your health starts coming back, your energy starts coming back, but it'll never happen until you accept the worst. Sometimes in life, you've got to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? And put it out there and say, okay, accept it. Accept it. If it happens, it happens. The moment you accept it, the devil's got no hold on your life at that moment. That's the time you'll go for broke. That's the time you can't be stopped. That's the time you'll do what other people will never do. People don't do great things under the influence of fear and worry. They never have. They'll hold back. They'll always put something in reserve. They'll always have a checkpoint. People that do great things are people that got in their mind, I got nothing more to lose. I'm putting it all on the line. I'm going with everything I've got. Are you with me? The last point in this story, at least the last point that I want to look at, is this. In verses 5, I love these lepers, because these guys just got up. They just got up. Verse 5, and they arose at twilight. They arose. Listen to me, listen to me. They arose. They arose at twilight. You know, that dusk dawn time, that odd time to where it's not completely dark, it's not completely light, it's what we call a twilight, that dusk dawn, 4 in the morning, 4, depending on the season of the year, that dusk dawn. They arose. Now, for them to arise took a lot of energy, took a lot of strength. They arose and began to walk. Why is that important? Because God, you know, when we look at the Bible, we find out that we're a human being. We call ourselves a human being. The Bible says we're a living being. God made us a living, book of Genesis. But you know what else we are? We're a vision being. God so constructed the human life that the only way we can function properly is through vision. We're a vision being. Now, why is that important? They arose. All of a sudden, I got somewhere to go. I got purpose. I've got potential. There's something still burning on the inside of my heart. I'm not going to take a back seat. I love the story of George Mueller. George Mueller built in England in his day and hour. There's no government that fed the poor in the 1800s. If the church and its charitable work didn't do it, it wasn't done. They starved. Mueller built an orphanage with 2,000 kids in his orphan. He lived by faith. He never knew from 1 week to the next where his food was coming from. He would pray, and pretty soon wagons would pull up and unload masses, quantities of food. And it all happened because of prayer and God speaking to people. When Mueller reached 80 years old, he turned to his 60-year-old daughter and said, I'm going to turn the work over to you. She said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to Africa to become a missionary. God made you to be a vision being. God didn't make you to sit. God didn't make you to have all your dreams behind you. Young, middle-aged, or old makes no difference. I love this story that's told. Pastor Paul knows this couple, Dr. Graham and Irene Baker in Papua New Guinea. When Irene was 9 years old, God gave her a vision of what she was going to do in her future. She saw a land that she never, geographically, she didn't even know it was there. A land called Papua New Guinea. It was under Canada, last nation on earth that practiced tribal cannibalism. They were all cannibals at that time. Tribal cannibalism wasn't outlawed until 1965. Irene Baker today is in her early 80s, so you can do the math. When she was 9 years old, there was still tribal cannibalism going on. It was a very difficult country. 9 years old, God gave her a vision. 9 years old, God told her what she was going to do in her future. She held on to that in her heart. All through school, all through college, she was the youngest nurse that ever graduated as an RN at that time in the history of the nation of Australia. She had a lot of guys that liked her, but she was hanging on for the one that would carry in his heart the same vision she carried in her heart. And then she met a builder by the name of Graham Baker. They took 2 little girls, went to the highlands of Papua New Guinea, and had 2 more little girls. 32 years later, they had planted 1,000 churches and a medical clinic that has seen today over 1 million people. They completely changed the direction and the trajectory of a nation, because at 9 years old, you're never too young. See, you're never too young. God speaks to 9-year-olds. God speaks to 6-year-olds. God speaks to 60-year-olds. God speaks to 80-year-olds. Like George Mueller, you're never too young, you're never too old. The moment you and I lose a vision, we've lost our future, because your vision is your future. These young men begin to get up. You are a vision being. Listen to me. I'm going to tell you something. You're a vision being. A vision being. A vision being. Your anatomy will only function properly under vision. Your brain will only function properly under vision. Your heart will only function properly under vision. Let me give you an example. I want you to think in your mind of an electric fan. Electric fan. Without the cover on it. I want you to hold the blade. It's electric. There's little tiny motors on those things. Hold the blade. Plug it in. Turn it on. Hold the blade. Just hold it. In your mind. Don't hold it. Plug it in. What's going to happen to that motor? You're going to burn it up. You're going to hang on to that little blade. That little motor's going to try to, it's got energy coming in the thing, but it can't spin. And it's going to burn it up. You burn it up. Why? Because if the fan doesn't burn the power will always burn the fan. Inside of you, there's innate power. Was placed in there by Almighty God. Vision directs that power. When that power that's innate, Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it abundant. There's a power inside of a human being. There's an energy inside of us. God made you that way. Vision is what allows the power to burn correctly. When the vision leaves, the power's still there. And when the vision leaves and the power's still there, the power's got nowhere to go, nothing to burn with. So it burns the person through anger, criticism, unforgiveness, strife, and remorse. And you watch people that are critical, remorseful, angry people, bitter people. It's because they're people without vision, because the power is now destroying them. There's a scorpion in South America, the only one of its kind, that when it's agitated, it will reach back, sting itself, and kill itself. Only when it's angered. And you take people that have no vision. People without vision are easily angered. And because they're easily angered, they'll poison themselves. Because if you don't burn, are you with me? If you don't burn the power, that power's still there. It doesn't leave you. It's still there. But it turns inward and it begins to burn you up. So vision is the only thing that God gave us as a people to burn the vision correctly. I've always said, if you don't have one, this man does. Find this couple, hook up, find out, and just hook your wagon to what they're doing and let that thing burn outward. But you don't want it to burn inward because it'll burn you up with anger, strife, resentment, criticism. You're never too young. You're never too old. And I'm going to end on this. The book of Ecclesiastes is an interesting book. Because the book opens up with the word vanity. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Vanity means futile, worthless, useless. That's what it means. Useless life, a futile life, vanity. And I used to read that and think, man, why does that? But then it tells you why. This is so strong. It tells you why. It says vanity, vanity, all is vanity. And you come around. I think it's verse 7 or 9. Let me find out what it is. So if you put it up on the screen, I don't want to mess up. 9! Ecclesiastes 1:9. Vanity, vanity, all vanity. In other words, it's describing a useless life. It's describing a fruitless life. It's describing a visionless life. Watch me. It's describing a life that has lost its vision, lost its potency. I was on the phone not too long ago to somebody. You know, we got so many in the church world today, in Western culture, that want to be neutral. Well, I wouldn't want to offend this. I wouldn't want to offend that. I kind of play the middle. You know the word neutral? You know what comes out of the word neutral? Neutered. If all I'm going to be is neutral, I'm neutered. If I'm neutered, I have no power. Are you with me? Can we get any more plain than that? Neutral people are neutered people. Neutered people are docile. That's why you neuter a dog. Because you want to make it docile. I got to get away from this. And anyhow, watch me. Listen to me. Futile, useless, worthless. Going nowhere. Vanity, vanity, vanity. And then he comes along at verse 9. This is the kicker. And he says something that I never understood. I used to use the scripture for years. Always interpret in a different way. It says, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new. And I thought, the way I always thought that meant was everything we have has always been, because there's nothing new under the sun. Not what it means. He's talking about vanity. To the person that lost their vision, when they wake up every day, what does the sun represent? It represents the beginning of a day and the ending of a day. And for that person, there's nothing new vision. When I'm not waking up to a new vision, my life will go back to vanity. uselessness, futility. Because for me, there's nothing new. Every day. The word under the sun speaks of the day I'm living. There has to be a vision every day. Something I'm moving towards. And if I'm not moving towards something great, for me, my life becomes vain, useless, hopeless, and vanity begins to sit in. We are made, you and I, to have a vision. We're vision beings. Never lose it. Some of the greatest works that people have done have been done at all different ages. So never count yourself out. The word retirement's not in the Bible. It was started by the Germans. It's a curse. The Germans invented retirement because they wanted men to die. That's where it came from. They would extract, under law, a man's ability to work because they knew he would die. The only reason why women outlive men is not because women are healthier. It's because a woman's work is never done. The worst thing a man could ever do is sit. Worst thing a man could ever do is to have one dream, and that dream is to retire. That's not a dream, it's a curse. It's not a dream. It's nowhere in the Bible. Are you with me? The greatest thing you can do is to have something new under the sun. So every day when you wake up, it's a new day. I'm like them leper. I'm gonna make headway. I'm going. And if I fall, I'm getting up again. A righteous man could get knocked down 7 times every time he'll get up, but one blow's enough to lay the wicked low. Stand up with me. 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 I want us to pray. I want us to pray. If you're here this morning and you'd say there's something in that just impacted me, just impacted my life. I don't want to leave this moment and just go off and do something else real quickly. I want us to search our own heart. Maybe it's been fear that's hampered you, that's holding you down. Some of us have to look at life, and it's important to do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Then accept it. Because once I accept the worst, I got nothing else to lose. And when I got nothing else to lose, I've got everything to gain at that moment. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've lost your vision. Maybe you're going through the motions. Maybe every day is a Groundhog Day for you. It's just a repeat of yesterday. And when that sets in, then life becomes vain. It becomes dull. It becomes dragged. It becomes useless. It becomes futile. We don't want that kind of life. We want something new, something fresh. Every day we're moving towards something. We're like those lepers. We're going to get up, even if it's hard. And it was hard for them, but we're going to get up and we're going to move. Even if it's twilight, even if it's a tough time to get up, we don't have to wait for the sun to come, for the sunrise. We're going to get up at the twilight. We're going to start now, right now. If that's you, with your head bowed and your heart open before God, and you'd say, here this morning, pray for me. I need that in my life. Just slip your hand up. Just hold it up. Hold it up, hold it up, hold it up, hold it up. All over the auditorium, hands going up everywhere. My God. Okay, let's just do this. Everybody just lift your hands towards heaven. I want to pray. Because somewhere, I believe God touched something in your heart. There needs to be a shift, a change, a decision, whatever that might be. All of us get in ruts. All of us can get into routines. The only difference between a rut and a grave are the ends are knocked out. That's the only difference. When we're in a rut, we're in a grave, we're in a pit. But it's time to make a decision. It's time to move out of a futile life, a vain life. It's time to dissipate fear, worry, anxiety. It's time to grab hold of something and say, God, there's something bigger. And until I discover maybe what that bigger is, I'm going to hook my wagon right here at the Christian Church at Minden. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Because if I help fulfill another man's dream, God's going to give me mine. The Bible said, whatever good thing you make happen for another, the same God will make happen for you. Lord Jesus, touch every heart right now. Burn with the fire and the presence of God into our heart. Let your word right now be a fire. Let it ignite within us the passions, the dreams, the areas of our life that have been pushed aside. Let those things ignite. Let that fire. You said that your word is like hot coals shut up in our bones, and let those hot coals begin to burn. Your word's like a hammer. Let it break those rocks that have stopped the wells of salvation from coming out of us. Those wells of vitality, those wells of energy, those wells of creativity. Let the hammer of God break them, and let your words a sword, let it pierce areas of our heart and areas of our mind until a song comes out again, joy comes out again, energy comes out again. God, we're going to stop dying. We're going to stop dying. We're going to start living every day and drink in every moment. And we're going to thank you for it. And we're going to live our life to the fullest. And we're going to lay it all down at the altar. All down. Lord, I pray for that to happen now. In every heart and every life, in Jesus' name. Look at me real quickly, just real quickly. I got a good friend of mine, Dave Brunk. Dave took his wife, Jan, and two boys, 2 girls, went to the nation of Belarus under the threat of communism and KGB. Gave his life there. Spent 12 years in that country until the KGB came after him one day and said that man shifted the culture of this nation. They wanted to arrest him. He slipped out. They blacklisted him. Means he can never go back, but he built such a tremendous work with Belarusians to run it that work continued and continues to this day. Dave went home to heaven about 4 years ago at a young age for what he had done. He was an athlete. Dave was at one time the #1 Golden Gloves boxer of the state of Wyoming. He also played college football for Washington State. He's an amazing individual, top of everything he did, athletic, personified. Died at 60. But after his death, they found out that right before he died, he wrote something down, and I took it. And at his homegoing, we didn't call it a funeral. We did it outside at his parents' house in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And it was a celebration of a man that laid it all down. And he said this, I've laid it all down. I gave it all away. I hang on to nothing. That was his epitaph. I gave it all away. I hung on to nothing. I laid it all down. That's, few people can say that. I want to be able to say that. I gave it all away. I laid it all down. Hung on to nothing. And they read that, and I remember I wrote it down, and I thought that is one of the most powerful statements a person could make at the end of their life. So let's have that as a motto. I challenge young people, don't get your thrills out of a gadget that you're staring at, a screen all day. There's a world out there that needs you. There's countries that are crying for you. There's nations that are reaching out. If you can't go, give your money and send him or send somebody else. But either you go or you send, or we're not going to live in between. Neutral and neutered are the same word. Pastor Paul. That's a good word to bring you up on.